past. The subject of time travel has appeared in a number of the X-Men comic books, particularly in Days of Future Past.
3, 2, 1, action.
This film has captured one of the essences of the comics, which I think appeals to people, that you can dip in and out of these stories and see old Magneto and young Magneto.
It's a great privilege and honor to be allowed to try and fill his sort of younger shoes, as it were, in this role.
You really think this will work? We were young. We didn't know any better. We will now.
It meant a lot to me to be able to assemble the original cast. I know that because of Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart, we were able to get James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender. I think it meant a lot, not only to me, but to our newer cast also.
When you're dealing with traveling through time, changing history, it gives you the opportunity to take characters in new directions.
Charles the Elder has lived longer, he has refined and developed these powers.
Even though those two Charles Xaviers are at incredibly different times in their life, you still see the seed of those interesting, exceptional people existing in one space.
Charles.
Charles.
Alles ist gut.
X-Men First Class was the origin story of Magneto. The beginning of the movie is a kid in a concentration camp, and the end of the movie is him saying,
I prefer Magneto. We crossed the line at the end of First Class. We see again by the end of this film that element of a megalomaniac. Singular sort of thought and action.
We are the future. We are the ones who will inherit this earth. And anyone who stands in our way will suffer the same fate as these men you see before you.
He's definitely so much more of a loner in this.
Eric?
He's very close to Mystique. He has very strong feelings for her.
What are you doing?
Securing our future. It's clear for him. It's the solution for the problem.
The Magneto that you see with me is a man with a conscience and a man with an unhappy life behind him. Has come through, I think, a great deal and isn't taking on single-handed or even with the help of his brotherhood, society as a whole.
Don't get in my way.
We are the future, Charles, not them. They no longer matter.
He's joined up again with his old friend, Professor X, and together they're going to try and move things forward.
I spent a lot of time with Ian sort of through the power of the internet, but he's great. He's a class act. He's an amazing actor.
Take a pause, everyone.
For this film, I've been sort of studying more his voice than I did on the first one, sort of incorporating that a little bit more.
Good to see you too, old friend. And walking.
I hope it doesn't seem a little bit weird from the last one.
Cut.
But 10 years have passed, and I believe Magneto was doing elocution lessons by himself in solitary confinement. People love Magneto because he's Magneto. At moments you see there's actually a lot of emotional depth. As we saw in the last one, there's a lot of damage. But for the most part, those moments then become more powerful if you don't dwell on them too much.
And gimbal is moving to level.
You abandoned me! You took her away and you abandoned me!
Angel. Azazel. Emma. Banshee.
Mutant brothers and sisters, all dead. Where were you when your own people needed you? Hiding! Pretending to be something you're not!
Eric!
You abandoned us all.
Eric challenged his worldview so much and then violently took away him not just the ability to walk, but also his belief in other people a little bit.
All right, guys, picture this up. Here we go. Ready? Here we go.
when we started talking about what Days of Future Past would be emotionally, one of the first things we started talking about was, what would Charles really be like after he lost his legs, lost the girl that he considered a sister and the only family member he really knew, and lost his best friend?
That's it, we're done.
Whoop!
Top marks, like I said, you are perceptive.
Professor I know would never turn his back on someone who lost their path.
Xavier's in a really bad place emotionally. The pain of losing Raven and the pain of losing Eric, coupled with all these voices and all the suffering, made him realize that he didn't want to be a psychic anymore. He didn't want the power. He didn't want the responsibility.
We came to you a long time ago seeking your help. And I'm going to say to you what you said to us then. Fuck off.
He's left more than just physically crippled. He is emotionally unable to deal with what happened to him.
There is indeed a line when I'm advising Logan about what he is going to encounter. He says, can't you just read his mind? And I say, no, because
I didn't have my powers in 1973. Logan, you're going to have to do for me what I once did for you.
It's been almost 15 years, hasn't it? Living from day to day, moving from place to place, with no memory of who or what you are.
Shut up.
Give me a chance. I may be able to help you find some answers.
The idea was to make him very different from how we've seen him before, as portrayed by Patrick. So I went glib, caddish, drinking and womanizing, and basically not taking things seriously.
Norman, pint of bitter for me and a brandy for the lady, please.
How did you know that?
Lucky guess. Name's Xavier. Charles Xavier.
The idea was always, if he's going to become that Patrick Stewart figure...
And the next time you feel like showing off, don't.
We don't deserve to make him like Patrick Stewart yet. We have to earn the right to become like Patrick Stewart.
We shot the entire future segment of the film first. So for the first month, it was the traditional cast, and then they were done. We had one scene with James and Patrick, and it was the first time they'd ever worked together. So an incredible moment. It's one of my favorite scenes in the film.
There is something about the idea of seeing your future self that I think is, on a human level, very compelling.
That's Patrick. That's Patrick Stewart. The Starship Enterprise. When I got the part 3 years ago, something like that, it got into the news or whatever, and my friend, who I used to watch X-Men with, called me up. I was a huge Star Trek fan as well, and the way you portrayed Jean-Luc Picard was amazing. So anyway, my friend Mark phones me up and goes like, hey, I hear you're going to be playing Patrick Stewart. He didn't say Charles Xavier, he didn't say Professor X, he said, I hear you're going to be playing Patrick Stewart, and he was so excited. So yeah, I'm a very lucky boy.
I've been around science fiction quite a bit, you know, and stuff like this happens. It's not uncommon. But today is my most interesting scene in the movie. Very appropriate. It came on what is my last day's work.
My first, I know. I was quite scared about that, to tell you the truth. Not only is it a really important scene that basically represents the apex of my character's arc, but this was a proper scene with the custodian of this character of 14 years.
Charles.
Charles.
That scene between Charles and Charles is the hinge in the movie where James McAvoy goes from someone who's hopeless and broken to someone who's starting to piece himself back together.
Charles, we need you to hope again.
Coming up with the idea, which I think was yours, that we should be almost nose to nose for the entire scene, instead of shooting it over a distance, which would have perhaps been the conventional way to do it, that we were literally in one another's faces. We've met a couple of times, but we've never worked together before, and suddenly you're eyeball to eyeball with a fellow actor for 6 hours, and it's a strange living, isn't it?
It is a strange old living, but it just seemed like, we've travelled through dimensions and time and realities and consciousnesses so that we can be in this room together and have this conversation. And it just felt like, yeah, we should be close. Because basically someone giving themselves a good talking to, really. But just represented with two characters.
You can become more powerful than you ever imagined.
At its core, it was a character confronting his older self, who now has all the wisdom of the future.
So this is what becomes of us. Eric was right. Humanity does this to us.
Not if we show them a better path.
He only has a moment that he can bestow that wisdom upon his younger self that is in such crisis. But sometimes a moment is all that it takes.
You still believe? Just because someone stumbles, loses their way, it doesn't mean they're lost forever. Sometimes we all need a little help.
He cannot be like the Charles Xavier that we've seen before, and I cannot mimic Patrick's performance. He's got to be different. Otherwise, why do an origin story if you're not showing how they became?
So much pain. It's not their pain you're afraid of. It's yours, Charles.
If we do a third movie, if we make more than £2.50 on this one, and they let us make a third movie, I mean, I'll pretty much be watching all your movies and copying everything you do, because the idea is that we do start so wildly different in First Class. We do remain so wildly different in this one. That is exciting, that's good, but that's only valid if we're taking you truthfully towards where we know he's always going to go, which is Sir Patrick Stewart.
Oh, I'm not the man I was.
It's beautiful, the way that they talk to each other. They were very excited about these two actors, to get to know each other and to be able to play off each other. It did mean a lot to me, and it meant a lot to them, too.
Step very gently out.
Find what you were looking for.
Power's back on.
Yes. Yes, it is.